I want to inform the chair so that he can respond probably to the House.
Let's hear first.
Article 221 of the Kenyan Constitution says at least 2 months before the end of each financial year, the Cabinet Secretary responsible for finance shall submit to the National Assembly estimates of the revenue and expenditure of the national government for the next financial year to be tabled in the National Assembly. According to what I understand this, Madam Speaker, a budget caters for both revenue estimates and expenditure estimates. Looking at what the chair of this committee has been exposing to the House, it is expenditure. So I want a clarification whether the revenue estimates have been tabled and whether that revenue estimate that was tabled includes the many loans that the government of Kenya is struggling to pay. Thank you.
Honorable Wamuchomba, if you recall, I think it was the 30th of April, yes, that the minister submitted the revenue. So you're 2 months behind. Yes, all those steps have actually been ticked off. So if you are following the calendar year, because when we came in February, we immediately dealt with the budget policy statement. Yes, the revenue was submitted on the 30th of April. Yes. And in fact, what I'll do while you just go to table office, you'll be able to find it. That is done 2 months before. Yes, let's proceed. We won't waste any time on that because, yes, let's, who do I give an opportunity here? Yes, I know. Let me just check who's here. Okay, and I was just checking the chairpersons who are ready. Yeah. You know, that's why some members nowadays boast that they don't come to Parliament. Yes, because if someone comes to Parliament, you'll be able to know that. So, Honorable Pukose, member for Endebess.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Just to inform members that the chairpersons would, in this type of debate, would have priority, but I'll just give maybe 4 chairs, then other members, and so on and so forth, so that everybody gets an opportunity. But I'm also persuading the chairpersons that even though you have 15 minutes, just in consideration of your other colleagues, if you could make it brief, so that many more people can have an opportunity, because this is one of the most important tasks that Parliament undertakes. And it's actually a mission-critical process so that we can allow more members to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I stand to support the consideration of the budget estimates for the financial year 2024-2025. Honorable Speaker, first I want to thank my committee for having spent time with the Ministry of Health, both the State Department for Medical Services and the State Department for Public Health and Professional Standards and its sagas. And I also want to thank the Chair of the Budget Committee, together with the Committee of Budget, for giving us an opportunity where we are able to sit and present the various committee budget, and more specifically for me presenting the budget for the Ministry of Health, that is budget line 1082 and 1083. Madam Speaker, when you look at the budget for health, we've done we did some laws in this year. Among them is the Digital Health Law, the Social Health Insurance Law, the Primary Health Care Law, and the Facility Improvement Law. Madam Speaker, under the Social Health Insurance Law, in this budget, we've provided 1.5 billion for emergency chronic and critical illnesses. We've also provided 4 billion for primary health care fund, meaning that our universal health care is now ready for rolling down, because the other contribution for the social health insurance authority will be contribution from members and also contribution from the public. And therefore, I want to reassure the Kenyans that this bill, this budget has taken care of making sure that we are able to operationalize both the emergency, chronic, and critical illnesses with 1.5 billion and the primary health care with 4 billion. Also in this budget, we've provided money, 2 billion for the Linda Mama program. That is to make sure that our women, when they go and deliver, they are able to be taken care of as we transition to a more comprehensive universal health care. Honorable Speaker, under this law, under this budget, we've also been able to make sure that the National Cancer Institute is able to be operationalized, because one of the biggest challenges in this country has been the issue about addressing the issues of cancer. And therefore, we provided 100 million to operationalize the National Cancer Institute. We've also provided 80 million to the National Cancer Institute to make sure that the established regional cancer institute centers are able to be functional. We have regional cancer center in Mombasa, we have one in Garissa, we have in Nakuru, we also have in Kisii, which is in the process of being built and it will soon be operationalized. And this will address matters about cancer within our country, in addition to the established Kenyatta National Hospital, Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, and the Kenyatta University Teaching and Referral Hospital. In this budget, Honorable Speaker, we've also provided Kenyatta National Hospital with 450 million to be able to buy another cancer machine, the LINAC machine for radiotherapy, because when you visit Kenyatta National Hospital with one machine which is functioning, we have many patients who are waiting. That machine is working without stopping, and the patients are being put on radiotherapy day and night, 24 hours. And that makes sure that we have many patients who are on the waiting list. And this makes it very pathetic, very discouraging for many patients who depend on government facilities for treatment. And therefore, by Parliament providing 450 million to Kenyatta National Hospital to buy another LINAC machine for this financial year, then we hope that Kenyatta National Hospital will now reduce the waiting time for patients who are waiting for radiotherapy within Kenyatta National Hospital. Honorable Speaker, in this budget, we've also made sure that we're going to make sure that the 23 KMTCs, which have been set up by the honorable members, will be able to make them operational through employment of more staff, through equipping of those KMTCs, and also through making sure that there is completion of construction. Madam Speaker, this budget, as much as it has had challenges, because initially the budget ceilings that were put, we had to reduce it by close to 30% for all the ministries. And that, I want to say that the ministry should not worry, because if the government is able to meet its target in terms of revenue collection, then what it means is that when we will have another supplementary one to address the various caps and challenges that we'll be able to face in the course of the financial year. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I want to support. Thank you.
The Honorable Member for the, Honorable David Kangogo, Member for Marakwet East. Honorable Kangogo. Okay, he's busy. He's not ready. Honorable Tangoya? No, your time passed. Proceed, Honorable Tangoya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity also to add my support to the Budget and Appropriation Committee for a well-done job. So I want really to thank the Chair and the committee for putting a lot of time to really come up with a very moderate budget. Honorable Speaker, listening to the Chair budget, it is so encouraging to realize that the budget, as read, has continued to really live to the promise that the Kenya government, Kenya Kwanza government promised to Kenyans. More importantly, Madam Speaker, to appreciate is that the budget has continued to really put more emphasis on the matters and sectors that are so crucial and important to the Kenyan people. To mention like agriculture, that a lot of emphasis and enhancement has been given to the sector of agriculture to ensure that the Kenyan people continue to be hunger-free. And it's something notable, Madam Speaker, that should be appreciated. It's also good, Madam Speaker, to note that the budget looked into the consideration of the pastoralist community, especially talking into the issue of restocking. It is the first time that we are actually seeing a very good positive direction in looking into the real issues that affect the Kenyan pastoralist. Madam Speaker, there is also, in the sector of security, there is an enhancement into the area of security, which is so crucial to the entire sector of this country, especially when we are handling and tackling the issue of insecurity and cattle rustling in the North Rift, and actually the issue of bandits in northeastern part of this country. The budget has really taken into consideration, and we want to assure Kenyans that with the enhanced budget and provision of the tools of service to our National Police Service and our security organs, Kenya is continued to be secure. There is a huge budget that has gone into the modernization program and even enhanced in the issue of operations. Madam Speaker, more importantly, there is a sector of government printer. That is a very crucial institution that does a lot of crucial documents to this country, to mention even the bills we use in this house, the logbooks, the title deeds, and the institution has continued to be in depleted state. My committee had also considered, and also the Committee of Budget had also considered to add and enhance the budget, which will go a long way to ensure that this important institution get back to its feet. Madam Speaker, in the budget, again within the ministry, there is Mbagathi National Police Hospital that has been ready and equipped for the last 3 or 4 years, but has never been able to be used by our security and police officers. And in the budget, there is a substantial amount allocated to it, and it is going to help a big deal to let our police officers get the much needed health services. Madam Speaker, on the issue of electricity, it is very encouraging to note the much consideration that the budget has been given, and I'm sure Kenyans are going to go back to enjoy the connectivity which was halted for some time now. Lastly, Madam Speaker, I want also personally to really appreciate that the budget really mirrors the promise made by the leadership of Kenya Kwanza, especially when we are talking about the tight state we are as a country, the austerity measures, especially in reducing the bare minimums, reducing the issue of foreign trips, so that the money gets to where it's so important to the Kenyan people. So I want to really join the rest of us to really appreciate and commend a well-done job. And I'm sure Kenyans are going to enjoy the fruit. I submit, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for House, the honourable Johanna Ngeno, Chairperson for Housing and Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for also allowing me this opportunity to also make my contribution towards this motion. Madam Speaker, I wish to state clearly that I support the motion. And I know very well, Madam Speaker, that these are annual estimates for the financial year 24-25, which is geared towards stimulating the economy of this country and also implementing the projects which the Kenya Kwanza government had proposed to the people of this nation. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the Chair for this great presentation and, of course, for the great balance and the serious balance he made in the distribution of funds towards several ministries or the various ministries concerned and the various departments which of course, are going to make use of these funds. Madam Speaker, I must also congratulate him for looking at the serious areas where many issues have been arising, especially on the areas concerning roads. Madam Speaker, I wish to congratulate the Chair and the committee for putting much considerations on the issues to do with the roads. Madam Speaker, remember, this year, rains have ravaged the country, Madam Speaker, so that even the roads which had been done properly, Madam Speaker, currently most of the roads in the country are impassable. So that we literally have to redo the roads like they have never existed before. But, Madam Speaker, I would have wished our chairman, given the limited resources, I would have wished if the resources were enough. Madam Speaker, I would have wished to see the extension of what we used to call low-volume roads, which were initiated in the previous regime, being continued at this current situation, so that those low-volume roads, Madam Speaker, made very serious impact on the societies that we come from. And most of them have also been almost destroyed by the water, by the rains, and would have been prudent, Madam Speaker, if those roads were repaired, and of course, extension of those, it was around 10 kilometers per constituency, would have been also prudent if they were extended to 20 kilometers so that we could, but of course, we understand the constraints of the budget. Madam Speaker, there is also the question of electricity, which I want to thank the committee for putting much considerations. I would have also wished they also allocated more funds, and this is also a request that we are asking them that in future, let us also ensure that the last mile connectivity, which had been initiated in the previous regime, is also continued so that people can access electricity, because electricity has also become one of the basic needs of our people, because most of the things we do nowadays, Madam Speaker, you cannot do them without electricity. So if you were to have electricity connections in every village, every household, then of course we will be able to access many developmental activities that we have. Madam Speaker, on the sector of education, Madam Speaker, and this was another area where we also had a discussion, I want to thank the committee and the chairman for their consideration of that sector. In this situation, Madam Speaker, and I think we will also be requesting or asking the committee and the chairman to please consider in the future, going future, that as much as we have allocated money for capitation in both primary and secondary education, we must also consider one time, one day, we allocate money to cater for the school feeding programs, not only on primary, but on day secondary education. Madam Speaker, remember, the introduction of free day secondary education was a great relief to most of the parents. And it had gone a long way in ensuring that many students who would have missed education because of the cost of education on secondary boarding schools, etc. Madam Speaker, when free day secondary education was introduced in this country, most of the children from the poor backgrounds have accessed education as we speak today, Madam Speaker. We have sent so many students to universities, we have sent so many students to colleges, and we have even sent so many students abroad who are the products of these day secondary schools. We would have wished as an extension, Madam Speaker, on the issue of day, because currently most of the students are sent home from day schools, and yet those day schools are free. You don't pay fees, but the major problem affecting those particular students is feeding programs. They are being sent home to bring fees to pay for food. Madam Speaker, it would have been prudent also if the committee and the chair was to consider adding 3,000 or even 5,000 on top of capitation so that we can take that one towards feeding the day secondary school students. In that connection, Madam Speaker, we will not be having these day students coming home, but I will be taking lunch in the school because we would have allocated some money to these particular programs. Madam Speaker, on the issue of security, I've seen a very good allocation towards security, and we are hoping that the concerned departments and the concerned ministry will ensure that we have proper security in this country. On my area, Madam Speaker, which is the housing, and you will protect me from some serious consultation, loud consultation, Madam Speaker, around me. I would wish to thank the committee because they considered the proposals which were made towards this process, and especially from my committee. And the allocation which was put here is the allocation which we actually requested. And Madam Speaker, I want to thank the committee, and especially the money allocated to the housing, which is around 87 billion. Madam Speaker, remember the projects which the President, His Excellency the President, initiated in this country, especially the affordable housing, which is catering for Article 43 of the Constitution, where the government is obliged to ensure that Kenya's citizens access affordable housing that has all the facilities that are concerned, from electricity, water, and lighting. I mean, electricity, water, and also proper sanitation. Madam Speaker, the programs which were initiated by the President are very good, and we have, as a committee, also have gone around the country and ensured that the programs which have been started are ongoing, and some of them had stopped, Madam Speaker, because the law was not in place. And the committee, I want to thank my committee, which is the the housing committee, which did proper public participation. And in that public participation, Madam Speaker, we brought the law here, and this House passed the law, and the President assented to it, and which unlocked the access to these particular funds, which was the housing levy, Madam Speaker. In the current allocation, Madam Speaker, I want to tell this House and the nation that the levy which was collected can now be accessed by the State Department to build houses. And Madam Speaker, the 87 billion which has been allocated in this budget proposal, Madam Speaker, budget estimates, will mostly, around 90%, will go towards building affordable housing. And Madam Speaker, I want to say that among us the affordable housing projects the State Department are undertaking in this country, we as a committee also, we allowed them to access the billions of money which has been collected as a levy towards, apart from building affordable housing in towns, especially in major towns. They also do affordable housing in cities and in small towns in the constituencies. But the most important part of these projects, Madam Speaker, is the hostels. because when we went around also the country, Madam Speaker, we realized that most of the parents who are sending students either to universities in Mombasa, in Kisumu, in Nairobi, the hostels in those universities, Madam Speaker, are few as compared to the number of students which are accommodated in those schools. And most of those students have to go and get houses outside the universities. And there are two factors in getting houses out or accommodation out of the university, Madam Speaker. One, insecurity. Two, the cost of those houses. So the building of hostels in our universities and colleges, Madam Speaker, will bring down the prices of accommodation to our students, so that parents, when they are sending their students either to the far areas, they will not be paying a lot of money towards accommodation. Madam Speaker, I want to say these budget estimates will help in helping, in making a reality the proposals or the promises which were made to the people of this country. And we are hoping that it is going to be implemented properly. And of course, Madam Speaker, the last part, which I think is towards also water. And water is one of the most fundamental factor in our lives, Madam Speaker. And most of us, the water the rain which actually ravaged the country, Madam Speaker, if you were to ask anybody in this house, Madam Speaker, no water was saved. The rainwater that happened in this country, Madam Speaker, because there were no dams, there were no proper storages. So even the rain which ravaged this country went to waste. Madam Speaker, I hope this budget and the implementers of the budget will ensure that in future we create situations where if there was going to be high rains like we experienced in the last months, Madam Speaker, that water will not go to waste, but it will also be stored for future uses. Madam Speaker, I wish to end there by saying I support this particular proposal for estimates. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Malava, Honourable Moses Ijendi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise to thank the Chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, together with the members of the committee, for a job well done. Madam Speaker, I really appreciate this committee because as Vice Chair to Education Committee, I take note that all the proposals we were having as a committee to the Budget Committee, all of them were incorporated to the advantage of the education sector. Madam Speaker, I also want to appreciate the fact that the government is taking seriously the education sector for what it is to this country. Because when you look at the budget, the education sector has taken the most huge part of it, which is accounting for 24% of the total budget. Madam Speaker, we have, as Education Committee, we have key areas which we have prioritized in terms of budgeting, and these are the following, which have been taken care of properly by the Budget Committee. This is provision of resources to support the free primary and secondary education, as well as junior secondary school education, schools infrastructure improvement to support CBC, funding to various universities, resources to help to support students in both universities and TVET institutions, and expansion of the basic TVET and universities infrastructure, and recruitment of teachers and TVET instructors. Madam Speaker, when we look at the education sector budget, it is also well aligned to the bottom-up economic transformation agenda of the government, and this actually accounts for 35.5 billion. And the priorities in this particular area, Madam Speaker, are the following: construction of 52 TTIs, construction of integrated resource centers, and construction of junior secondary school classrooms and junior secondary school learners capitation, Madam Speaker, which was an issue in the previous financial year. So, Madam Speaker, the Education Committee noted some key areas that require concrete policy direction for future funding and a proper and seamless flow of activities in the education sector. Madam Speaker, when it comes to the Teacher Service Commission, as reported, there was a hue and cry about the junior secondary school interns. We are reporting here that we had actually a proposal to the Budget Committee that all the interns who are numbering to 46,000, all of them must be converted into permanent and pensionable employment. Madam Speaker, this has been factored in, taken care of. We have, however, allocated another 20. We proposed also for an allocation of 4.7 billion to continue with the interns in the country so as to bridge the gap that's there in terms of teaching of junior secondary schools. And the coming financial year will recruit about 20,000, which was our proposal. This will be in line with actually bridging the gap that's there in teaching. Madam Speaker, I would report that it was very interesting that there was demonstrations, and as even these demonstrations were going on because of incitement left and right, the Education Committee had already taken care of this fact, and maybe it's just to assure all those who will be taken on internship not to make any noise, not to go on streets, because this is now provided for that when you are intern, after a particular period of time, you'll be converted into permanent pensionable. The only thing that we are requesting the TSC to do is to ensure that there's a legal framework on the program of internship in our schools, whether it's to take 1 year or to take 2 years before absorption. Madam Speaker, I also thank the committee for giving into our requests for 1 billion for promotion of teachers. You recall this ending financial year, there was promotion of teachers, but majority of the teachers who were to be promoted were not promoted because of the constraint of funding. So this year there's 1 billion that will take care of those teachers who are not promoted. And Madam Speaker, what we have to note is that most of the teachers stagnate in one job group for a very long time, over 15 years. Maybe we will need a policy on this when it comes to promotion so that this is not actually held back because of funding as it's happening currently. Madam Speaker, in the area of TVET, we are aware as members that each and every constituent must have a TVET. We have also, the Budget Committee, through our proposal, some good money was allocated to ensure that all constituencies now have TVETs. However, we want to note as a committee that there are some delays in implementation of these projects. For example, in this financial year, we have about 14 TTIs that have not been implemented simply because of delays in tendering processes in our government systems. So this maybe will require the attention of the government, the ministry, to fast-track this particular process. Madam Speaker, there also has been an allocation of some good money, 2.7 billion, for infrastructure in our junior secondary schools. This money, maybe members have to note, it will be coming through a CDF, our constituency offices. The only thing that maybe has to be worked on is to ensure that there is proper collaboration between the Ministry of Planning, the Department of Planning and Basic Education, and of course the CDF boards, to ensure that there is seamless implementation of this project in our schools, because as much as we began this particular process, we have not received, for example, money. For the last financial year, money has not yet hit the accounts of CDF offices to commence this particular process of construction of infrastructure in our schools. Madam Speaker, we also note here that we were also so surprised on Education Committee during the the estimate that came from Treasury, which actually had struck off a feeding program in our schools. We pushed through this, and I want to thank the Budget Committee for actually taking into this and restoring this as per our proposal. So, Madam Speaker, we as an Education Committee want to assure Kenyans and the general population and these members that we are really keen on what's happening in the country in terms of, in view of our education in our country, education standards in our country, and considering that most persons now have taking their children to school, we want to assure the country that we will continue fighting and ensuring that all is well in our education sector, in spite of a few hitches here and there, as we move on with the new funding model, even at the universities. Otherwise, Madam Speaker, I support.
East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support the budget estimate 2024-2025. Madam Speaker, I don't want to say a lot because many of my colleagues, including the chair of Budget and Appropriation Committee, and when he was moving, Madam Speaker, he spoke a lot cutting across the sectors and the importance of this budget, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to say some few things. Number one, Madam Speaker, I'm happy that there is some little increment, especially in capitation, through the Ministry of Education. And Madam Speaker, even as we support the allocation to the Ministry of Education, I think there is need for government, Madam Speaker, to look into the formula of capitation. Because, Madam Speaker, we have seen that the current formula is not favoring many students. And many of the students, Madam Speaker, they have dropped. Number two, Madam Speaker, the allocation they have given to water, especially on mitigation of flood control, is very important. Madam Speaker, for the last few months, we've seen many floods across the country. Many people lost their lives. Our roads were destroyed. Many water infrastructure, almost 70% of our water infrastructure across the country were destroyed, Madam Speaker. And the allocation given